Hi everyone, this is Hussin from EFXCO bringing you another tutorial. This time around I'll be talking about Adobe After Effects and how you can composite CGI into it using what we call a round-trip 3D pipeline, which is built into After Effects. So if you have used After Effects for a while, you would know that After Effects is not a 3D software. It's a 2D compositing and 2.5D compositing software. So if you wanted to use a software, or you wanted to use a footage which has 3D footage in it, you could do a few things. Number one is you probably could buy a plugin, something like this Element 3D by Video Copilot, which allows you to import 3D elements or 3D objects into After Effects. Or if you're not already known, you can also use Cinema 4D Lite, which comes into After Effects or comes with After Effects, which you can use to do the 3D or CGI compositing. So today I'm going to show you how to do that, the round trip 3D pipeline with After Effects and Cinema 4D. Okay, so without further delay, let's begin. All right, so I'll be providing you with this footage so you can try it on your own. Please look at the description and then you can download this footage and try it for yourself. So I've got I've got After Effects open here. I've got After Effects 2020, which is the latest version. You may have seen some tutorials on YouTube about the same pipeline, which is available. But this time around, I'm going to show you with the latest version of After Effects, which is After Effects 2020. And this version is actually, let's have a look. About After Effects is version 17.1.1. And the Cinema 4D version that I'll be using is actually the S22 Cinema 4D Lite. So let's begin. So we're going to talk about a few things. Number one, we're going to do a tracking on the footage. We'll be doing some exporting the tracking into Cinema 4D Lite, add the 3D objects. We will add a shadow catcher, add lighting and materials, and then we will put in an ambient occlusion, and we'll preview the final scene. So let's proceed. So here I have After Effects open. So we have the new composition from footage button here. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to go to my desktop. I'll bring in the footage in. In this case, this is a movie file, an MOV file, which I shot. Okay, so here we have the footage. I'm just gonna hit my play button so you can see that it's about 8 to 7 seconds, or maybe more. So what we're gonna do here is we are going to put a CG object right where the table is. So if you notice in this footage, I've purposely placed some items. So we'll be able to track them with all these items in the footage. Okay, I'm going to stop that. So since this footage is quite lengthy, I'm going to trim it down to just maybe that part until there. So because CGI is going to be heavy, every time you bring any 3D element into a 2D compositing software, it's going to be heavy. So we want to make the render go fast. So we try and cut the footage down. So what I'm going to do is right about here, maybe about a frame 350. Okay, I'm gonna trim this footage down. I'm gonna press B on my keyboard, B for begin. Okay, and I'm gonna push the playhead down even further. Let's say we stop somewhere around 450, right? I'm just gonna click on over here and just say 450. It's gonna be a simple short footage just to show that we'll do a camera tracking. The CGI object will stick to the table here. So again, I'm gonna go to 450, frame 450. And then I'm going to click on end or the November or the end button to trim it down. Once I've got this clip trimmed down, I'm going to right click on this gray area here. I'm going to just say trim comp to work area. Okay, and now we have a shorter footage, which is going to be much faster to render. I'm going to stop that. Right about there, that's where we're going to put our CG object. Okay, so I'm going to put somewhere in the middle here and start tracking this footage. So to track a footage, but just before that, I want to make sure that we organize our composition or organize our project panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the footage here, take the footage and drop it into a bin. And I'm going to call this footage. You can call it whatever you want. So I've got a composition here called table track, which is this footage over here. And if you look at the composition settings, it's going to be a 2048 by 1152. It's a 2K footage and it's running at 29995. So I'm going to change that to 29.97. Yeah. And again, I'm going to double check on the start frame. Yeah, so let's make it to start at 000. It'll be easier for us to track later in Cinema 4D. If you leave it at 00349, you're going to have a bit of issues when you check the timeline in Cinema 4D. So I'm going to make that to 0, and it should follow the other one. Yeah, so it's going to be start frame is 000, and then it's going to end up at 101 frame. So press OK. All right, so you can see that we can begin here at 000, and the last frame is going to be 100 frames. Yeah, so you've got exactly 100 frames here. All right, so let's do the tracking now, so we can start putting in the 3CG object over here. Okay, so before we go any further, let's save our file. We always need to save our files here. So I'm going to go down to File, Save As, the Cinema 4D Round Trip 3D Pipeline. Okay, so let's give it a name. I'm going to call this 3D Track, or 3D Tracker, AEP. Right, let's save that. So we have our file saved, and let's just select the layer. All right, select the layer and go down to Animation, and we're going to choose Track Camera, and it's going to start tracking the camera. So what I like to do is I like to cancel the tracking first, because it's an automation process. You can't tell After Effects to begin wherever you want it. It's going to do it automatically. Before you do an analyze, I like to change a couple of things in the plugin. Firstly, I'll open up Advanced, and I would like to check on the detail analysis. So that gives us a better tracking, but again, it's going to take a bit more time. But if you have a large footage like this is a 2K footage, we want to probably turn the detail analysis on. As soon as I do that, it's going to restart retracking again. Okay, so under the solve method, you can change to whatever you want, but I'll just keep it as auto detect for now. So I'm going to click on detail analysis, and it starts tracking. This may take a few minutes or to a few hours, depending on your machine and depending on the footage. So in this case, it's going pretty fast. So anyway, if this goes any longer than this, I'm gonna stop and then come back. Yeah. Okay, so we have the footage analyzed. So you can see a few things that's happening right now in your comp area here, right? The comp window. You will see that there's a lot of axes, a colorful axis in your scene, and then if you move the mouse around, you will see this target area going around. Okay. So in order for you to look at this better, I'm gonna go back to the 3D Camera Tracker plugin again, or the effects. And I'm going to increase the size of the points. You can see over here, track point size. Let's make them bigger so you can see. Yeah. And then we have the target size here, which you can also change it maybe slightly bigger. Right. So it's pretty slightly bigger track. There you go. Right. So what you can see in the scene is that you have larger axes or larger tracking points when it's closest to the camera. But the tracks become smaller when it goes to the back, to the room at the back here, right? This goes to show that the camera has also solved, and it knows where the front is and where the back area of the room is. Also take note where the lights are coming from in this footage, because later when we want to make the CGI realistic, you will have to understand about lighting system as well. So you will see that there's a lighting coming from the back of the room here. There's a large window at the back. And then there's some lighting coming up from the front part of the room or from the ceiling, right? You can see a shadow over there and a shadow coming this way. So that'll be important for us to do when we do lighting in a bit. Okay, so with the tracking done, okay, I'm gonna just move the things around until I can get something flat on this area here. So if I click my mouse somewhere around there, you can see I got something like a flat surface. And if you push the target to the back, you can see the target is moving around flat on the surface. It might not be exactly what we want, but this is good for now. Later on in Cinema 4D, we will change this to make it even better. All right. So I'm going to leave my target over here, right? And what we're going to need to do now, so what happens here now is that it's actually selecting minimum of 3 points for it to have that flat on the table. Right, flatness on the table. So you can move this thing around anywhere you want, or you can pick up any target that you want. But I've selected that, and if I put my cursor right in the middle of the target, you will see this square arrows or square arrows going left and right, up and down. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say set ground plane and origin. So the reason why I'm doing this is because The ground plane and origin is going to be where, when we create a 3D object later on, that's where it's going to be in the middle, right? 0, 0, 0 of a 3D scene. So I'm going to show you that a little later, but I'm going to select that first. This is very important for you to do this. Select plane and origin, and then again go back to the middle of the target, right click again, and then this time around I'm going to create some reference objects first for you to take it then to Cinema 4D and do something with it. So I'm going to do a solid and a camera. Okay, I'm going to click solid and camera, and a couple of things will happen. Number one is you will see a blue square in the middle, also on the table, and in your layers panel you will see that now we have a track solid, we have a 3D camera, and that footage is over there. Okay. So 3D camera now, it's available there. This will be the camera that mimicking of what exactly was what the person was shooting this footage did. Yeah. So I'm gonna just select the solid here. I'm just gonna make it parallel to the table over here. So that's will be the axis that we have here. We have the blue axis which is pointing upwards. That's the top axis. We have one to the right and one to the back. Okay. So if I would open up my track solid, or I can choose my rotation tool up here. And I'm going to select or click on the blue axis over here. You can see the letter Z there. I'm just going to turn it around, yeah, or spin it, or rotate it. And then I'm going to hit S on my keyboard to scale it up, yeah. And you will see that you have a nice solid on there. So let's check this tracks. So I'm going to just make sure that I have my CTI selected here. I'm going to click on spacebar. You can see now that the blue solid is sticking to the table. That goes to show that our track was done correctly. Okay, if you are a technical person and you want to know how good the track is, usually what we do is we'll go back to our table track MOV layer, and here you can see what's the average error here. So 1.3 is actually not a good track. If you want a good track, it should be less than 1.0. But let's just go with this for now. Okay, let's see what happens after this. I think it should be okay. Usually if you are doing compositing for 3D tracking and you're looking for production stuff, it has to be lower than 1.0. All right, so with that done, you can see that the blue solid is sticking to the table. What we're going to do now is we're going to export this data into Cinema 4D. So with nothing selected, I'm going to go over to File, and I'm going to say Export Maxon Cinema 4D Exporter. You're going to get this error saying that 2D layer is not found, but it's okay. Let's just click on OK, and it will ask you to save this file. So I will say table track export, and it's .c4d or .cinema 4d. I'll leave it in the same folder here. All right, I'm going to save it. With that, we can jump into Cinema 4D and have a look at the export. So for Windows users, what you can do is you will need to bring the Cinema 4D file you just saved back into After Effects, and you can use Edit and Edit Original. For Mac users, you might be able to just open up Cinema 4D right from your dock here. But I'm going to do this favor for for Windows users, for you to do the same thing. Cinema 4D Mac users can do the same thing as well. So I'm going to do a right click here and import that file. It's going to be on a folder. It's called Cinema 4D file, and I'm going to click on open. It brings it into the project panel, and select that, and we'll go to edit, and we're going to say edit original. So the system will recognize that this is a Cinema 4D file, and it will open up Cinema 4D, which is pre-installed or automatically installed in After Effects. So I'm going to click on edit original. Here we are in Cinema 4D. We have the solid there, and if I just play this timeline here, you can see it's exactly the same as what we saw in After Effects. So we have successfully exported and imported that scene into Cinema 4D. All right, I'm going to go back to the beginning, and just a couple of things that I need you to take note here, that I'm using Cinema 4D version S22. This is the one that comes together with the latest version of After Effects, if you have updated it. If you don't, you might have some pop-ups telling you you're not using this latest version, or if you're using the older version, the workflow that I'm showing to you now might be different, right? In your top right corner in Cinema 4D, you will see that you have a group. I'm going to click on the plus sign to open the group up. You can see you have the camera and you have the track solid. Okay, this is a track solid, which is the solid that was created inside of After Effects and brought over into Cinema 4D. And you'll see that's blue line. You can see a blue ball here. or the sphere. That's the color of the Cinema 4D. And let's look at the camera. So in the camera section, you will see that you have a little square with a dot in it. This is to show that the camera has been locked in this scene. So if you want, I wouldn't advise you to move this camera at all at the moment, so let it be locked. If you want to add something and you want to move the camera around, I would strongly suggest you to click on the little tiny button over there to unlock the camera. So we're going to do this many times. So please, always before you go back to After Effects, lock the camera again and we'll see the same scene. Otherwise, I'll show you what happens if you do not do this. Okay, so I'm going to click on little small tiny dot there in the middle of the 3D camera tracker area here. And now you can see that you have, if I zoom out, okay, up here you can see you have all the navigation tools in Cinema 4D. You have that pan tool, all right, you have the zoom or dolly tool. Okay, I'm going to zoom right out. You can see that we have the solid there, yeah, and we have the orbit tool, yeah, which allows you to orbit. You can also use your Alt or Option on your keyboard, but let's use this for now. It'll be much easier for us to play around with this, yeah. And if you notice something, that the solid is not sitting right exactly where the 00 point is. That's the 00 point over there. So what we'll need to do is we will have to make the solid go down to the floor over here, right? Otherwise, when you create a 3D object, which you're really going to create it in 000 area, you're going to have a tough time in aligning them together. So it's best if we align this solid down there. Okay, so let's switch the view to what I call a four panel view by clicking your middle mouse of your, you have a middle mouse with the 3-button mouse as the middle mouse. Click on it, now you see a 4 view, yeah? So every panel here has that view controls, yeah? I'm going to zoom it out. So this is the top view, and then I have also this is the right view. I'm going to use the pan to move around. So that's the 000 point, and the solid is those over there. And this is your front view. Let's zoom that out. So that's your solid. That's sitting over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the solid, the middle part of solid to right to here, which is going to be here as well, and then going to be there as well. Okay. So using these handles that I can find here, you can see these handles. These are blue, red, and green handles. If I middle click again, it goes back to the 4 view. If I click again over here, it goes back to this top view. I'm just doing a middle click here, and then middle click here, and then middle click here. All right, so I'm going to do is I'm going to use this views now to bring it down, to try and see where I can put 00. I'm use this red handle to bring it right to the center, and then I'm going to use the top here to bring it down to where that is. Okay, so you can see that now it's assuming that it's going to be right in the middle there somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys. Yeah. If I were to go back to the view of the camera, lock it again, and now we have something that sticks to the 000 point. So this solid is actually a reference. It's not going to be used. We're going to discard it in a bit, but just to see as a reference where all the 3D objects is going to be created. All right, I'm going to stop that. We'll go back to the beginning, and now let's put in the 3D object. So let's save this scene and see how it works in After Effects. And as I mentioned, this is a round trip 3D pipeline, which means whatever you edit or whatever you update in Cinema 4D gets updated in After Effects at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command or Control S on my keyboard, and that's all you have to do. If you get this kind of prompt, you just say yes. Okay, Control S, and then just jump back to After Effects using the Command tab or the Control tab. Okay, here we are back in After Effects. There's nothing different here because we have not had a chance to put a Cinema 4D layer into our composition yet. We won't be needing the solid anymore, so you can switch off the eyeball for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Cinema 4D file. I'm going to drag it to the top of the comp, and the plugin for Cinema 4D, or called CinemaWare by Maxon, will automatically pop up. And here you can see that you have the solid over there. You have some grid lines. So this is going to be what we call a draft view. So let's change to a final view by going to the render settings. Under renderer, change the viewport to current. This is now what we call the the final view, or the final render view. And let's play that. You can see that now it's going to be a bit slow, but then again, because it's Cinema 4D running at the back and After Effects rendering at the same time. So this is where you might want to change your resolution, maybe to something like half. Let's click on that. It's much faster now. All right, so whatever object that was in Cinema 4D now is inside of After Effects. Okay, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to jump back to Cinema 4D, Control or Command tab. All right, and let's do something here. So I'm going to create a 3D text we're going to put in this area here that will appear inside of After Effects. Okay, so before that, let's say save our file just in case. Just always good to save your files, you know, Command and Control S. And let's create a 3D object. So I'm going to uncheck or unlock the camera again. Okay, now we're going to view closer to what we want to see, which is going to be like a 3D text over here. Just going to swing the thing around, and I'm going to use my pan tool just to zoom in a bit, dolly it a bit. Okay, so I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 3D text. So up here in your menu, the menu of Cinema 4D, you can see that you have a couple of icons over here. I'm going to click the second icon, hold down for a few seconds, and then I'm going to go and grab the text tool. Right, you can see our text is kind of small over there. So once you have the text tool selected and activated, you will see in your content or the objects manager, you will have an object called text. And I can rename that if I want to. I'm going to call this 3D text. Be easy for us to reference later when it's in Cinema 4D, in After Effects. Okay, so at the moment, if I do a render, you won't see anything because let me just make it a bit bigger. So whenever you select any of the object over here, you will see the attributes at the bottom of the screen, yeah, on the bottom right of the screen. So here we have the height, the horizontal spacing. So I'm going to just increase the height by clicking and dragging upwards. Try and make it as big as possible. Okay, the solid is quite small, so it's going to be something like a edge of solid. So I'm going to make it to 1800 centimeters. Yeah, you see the CD object. Sorry, you will see the 3D text there. There you go, right? And I'm going to just use this arrow here and push it to the middle, something like that. All right, so if I do a test render now, we're using this button over here, you'll see there's nothing. Yeah, nothing will pop up because it's not a 3D object yet. It's just a path. So let's click away, and then let's click on the 3D text again. To make it into a 3D text, you will have to put the extrude function on it. Okay, so I'm going to go and select the extrude function by clicking this yellow box over here. This is highlighted. If you're using an older Cinema 4D, you might not see this yellow highlighted. It could be a different version, but they have changed a bit. I'm going to click on extrude, and over on the objects manager, you will have to take the extrude, you have to take the 3D text and make it the child of the extrude by dragging on it until you see a drop down or until you see a pointed down arrow or arrow pointing down, and then you let go. So now you can see you have a 3D object in our scene. Right now, if I do a render, you can see we have a 3D object. Okay, let's make the object look nicer by, if I were to just orbit around and just zoom in. Okay, first and foremost, obviously I want to change the font and how it looks like. Maybe we look from the front a bit. Yeah, for you to change now or to modify the text, you have to select the extrude object now because there's some functionality in its attributes that we need to change. Number one, we will change the offset, just making the text extrusion. Let's make it to 500. That's perfect. 500 is okay. And let's go to the caps tab, enable bevel. I would like to make a bevel for the text. Let's just use the round bevel, and then you just increase the size for it. So if you look at it very closely, you can see that we have a nice bevel going on here. There you go. I like to have the bevels because we can see the highlights of the text. Yeah, because if you look at this way, it's going to be a bit boring. It's a better text to have a bit of nice bevels there. Okay, color will have to change. Okay, but I'll do that in a bit. So let's do a test render. You can see now we have a nice text over there. Okay, let's change the text to something else. Obviously, the word text will not be just nice to have. So I'm going to just select the text object now. Here you see under the object panel, you have the word text. We can change it to 3D Tracker. Click away and then they'll be updated. All right, so let's select it and then bring it back into the middle. Maybe 3D Tracker is a bit too long of a word. Let's call it something else. Let's call it Cinema 4D. Cinema 4D, and let's also change a couple of things here. Under the extrusion, so under the 3D text, let's change the horizontal spacing. Make them come closer. Let's change the font. Some of my favorite fonts will be something like Gotham. So I'm going to go and look for Gotham. Yep, that looks like more like a nice graphics font. Let's do a render test. Nice. All right, so we're done with the 3D text. I want to create a nice material for this, so it would be nicer to look at in the composite, right? To create a material in Cinema 4D, right at the bottom here we have a panel. We already have one material which belongs to the solid. So if I were to make a new material, I'm going to say create material and new standard material. Or the other way could be, we'll just hold down the control or command and click and drag on this material over here. You're basically duplicating the material, right? So I'm going to double click on the material to open up its attributes or the material editor. Click on the color. Let's change the color to something else. Let's make it something orangey. Something orangey. Let's leave everything else default for now. I'm going to close that. To apply the color to the Cinema 3D object is very easy. Just click on the material and drag it onto the text. Render. Nice. What we're going to do now is we're going to save this and jump back into After Effects and see how it looks like. So again, don't forget to lock the camera. Command S or Control S to save your scene and jump back into After Effects. There you go. We have that 3D object there and it's sticking to the table. All right, it doesn't look real now because we do not have shadows. We do not have the contact shadows. We'll make it look real. For now, this is okay. I'm going to switch off the solid inside of Cinema 4D and see what happens here. And then we'll do something else to it. We can turn the Cinema 4D text around so it's parallel with the table there. So again, I'm going to save here in After Effects, jump back into Cinema 4D. Let's get rid of Track Solid by clicking on this little green arrow or the green check mark. That's gone. Okay, I'm going to select my 3D text or my extrude and I'm going to rotate it. So up here we have all the movement and rotation and scale icons. Click on the scale icon, click on the rotate icon and just rotate it around. I'm going to save that, Control S. So every time you go back to After Effects, you will have to save it, yeah? So Control S, jump back to After Effects, see whether it's aligned properly. That's nice. So the next thing we want to do is we are going to insert the shadow. Let's go back to After Effects and have a study the lighting again in this footage, right? So you will see that you have a large window at the back here. There's a lot of lights coming from there. That could be our key light. And then we have some lights coming from the ceiling, which is going to be, if you look at this shadow of this little mannequin here, you can see there's a lot of kind of strong shadow coming from this side of the footage. And that's another soft kind of a shadow going backward. So we're not going to bother about that. It's more about looking at this shadow over here and trying to make the Cinema 4D shadow fall off to the front of the word Cinema 4D. Let's do that. So we're going to attempt 3-point lighting in Cinema 4D. Okay, so I'm going to click and unlock the camera. So I'm going to zoom out a bit. Make sure that we have ample area that we can see our lights. So that's the camera over there. So there should be a light at the back. There should be a light in front of here, and then there should be one light from the side here. So to light up the scene in total to cover everything, yeah. Okay, let's create the first light. Up here we have what we call the light icon. So I'm going to click on it and then click on the first light. Okay, it will be created right in the middle there. And using our move tool, I'm going to just select that and go towards the back. Okay, so I'm going to leave one over there. If you want to go into the 4 view mode, you can see it from the top. There's one light over there, just mimicking that the window was at the back there just now. And here we can see that it's quite high there. So later when you put a shadow, the higher the light, the shorter the shadow, the lower the light, the longer the shadow, yeah. So just leave it there for now with the one grid. And then let's create another light, which is going to be right in front. Again, I'm going to use the same icon here. We'll create another light, which is at 000 for now. Let's bring it to the front and bring it upwards and to the right. It's going to light up the face of the Cinema 4D text. And let's create one more light. And this time around, I'm going to push it more to the left, upwards, to light up the side of the text in a bit. Okay, we can always check this later on and come back and change stuff. I'm going to middle click the window here. And let's lock the camera. And then let's have a look with the rendered. So let's unlock the camera again and let's have a look at a different angle. Zoom in. Move that around. I think the front light is a bit too bright compared to one to the back, because the back light is supposed to be the key light. Yeah, so I'm going to dim down the front light a bit. So again, we have 3 lights here. Light 1 will be the first light. Yeah, so I'm going to just click on it and say key light. You can always rename stuff like this. And I'm going to call this a fill light, which just comes from the front part. and I'm going to call this let's call it side light. Okay, so the key light's supposed to be stronger than the fill light. So if I select the light, we have the attributes over here. The intensity is actually 100% at the moment. I'm going to bring it down, right? Just slightly down to maybe about 60% of the compared to the key light. Let's do a test render. Yeah, much better. Okay, we can always come and change all this in a bit. Let's go back to After Effects and check what's going on. So Control S again. Okay, jump back to After Effects. There we have that lighting thing going on. Okay, maybe the front light could be a bit brighter. All right, but let's go back to Cinema 4D. In order for us to have the shadow, we will have to what we call a shadow catcher, which means there'll be a simple polygon on the flat surface of the table where it catches the shadow. All right, so let's do that. So in order for us to do a shadow catcher, let's go into this icon over here and let's click a floor. Okay, that's our floor there. So I'm going to just maybe spin it around. So R for rotation. And let's scale it up a bit. So I'm going to scale using my properties in the attribute panel here. It's not too big, but just nice to see the shadows in a bit. Let's save that just in case. Alright, so in order for us to cast a shadow, if I do a render right now, you will see there's no shadow because the shadow has not been enabled yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the light, the key light, and if I were to go down to its shadow properties, and at the moment it says no shadows, let's change it to soft map, shadow maps soft, and let's have a look at now whether we have shadows. Yeah, we have shadows there, right? Perfect. So I'm going to save this in. We're going to go back to the After Effects camera. Save that, jump back, and you see now we have shadow, right? The shadow should be more towards this side, but it's okay. We will take care of that in a bit. All right, so I'm going to just take out my key light and I'm just going to push it around. Zoom out. That's the key light. It's kind of far away, just bring it closer. Brighter, I guess. That's the fill light. Yep. And let's Control or Command S, jump back to After Effects. Yep, that's the shadow I like to have, yeah? Perfect. Okay, so to make the composite more realistic, if you notice, if I do a render here, it looks like the shadow is nice, but also could be nice if we can put what we call an ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is a light that's not directly hitting the 3D object. It's an occluded kind of light, which sometimes it's bounced lights that hits the 3D object from different angles. So it'll be nice, or it'll be even more photorealistic to have that shadow sitting or hitting the Cinema 4D text over here. In order for us to enable the ambient occlusion, we go down to the render settings by clicking this button over here. And then down here we have the effect button. Click on that and let's enable ambient occlusion, and just simple as that. Let's close this panel, and now if I do a render, you'll see a bit of ambient occlusion going on at the bottom of the Cinema 4D text. A very subtle effect, but it looks very realistic because it's actually a contact shadow which it hits the table. So that with that done, I would like to now do the composite inside of After Effects. So before we do that, a couple of things that we have to do. As I mentioned earlier, there's a different workflow now for the latest version of After Effects. So I'm going to do is I'm going to select my extrude, or in this case, I'm going to just call it my 3D text layer. And I'm going to create a layer out of it. So I'm going to right click and I say add a new layer. And if you notice in the right side here, you can see now you have a layer panel. It has a layer now, right? Because we just created a layer. So I'm going to rename that layer to 3D text. All right. Okay, so that's done. And then let's jump into After Effects and do the composite. So I'm going to press Ctrl S to save and jump back to After Effects. First and foremost, we have to get rid of this gray shadow catcher. So in order for us to do to get rid of that shadow catcher, select your layer, which is the first layer. In your CinemaWare Mac by Maxon plugin, you will see that you have this under project settings. You will see this Cinema 4D layer, which is disabled at the moment. Let's enable that. Okay, and set the layers, click on it, and I'm going to set this layer to the 3D text layer, which we just created in Cinema 4D. I'm going to press OK. And now the shadow catcher is gone. Right, so that's step number one. Step number two now is we will have to do render passes. So if you know any 3D, you will know that we have to create render passes for you to composite in After Effects. So because since this is a live back and forth with Cinema 4D, you can set that up inside of Cinema 4D itself. So let's jump back to Cinema 4D and show you how to do it. So inside the render settings, let's click on the render settings again. What we have here is the multipass, which has to be enabled. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a couple of multipasses. Number one is going to be the RGBA, which is going to be the color channel or the color information of the 3D object. Number two is going to be shadows, and number three is going to be ambient occlusion, which needs to be seen inside of After Effects. So down here we have the word multipass button. Click on it. So I'm going to enable RGBA image, and I'm going to go back and click one more time. I'm going to click on shadows, and I'm going to click on, last but not least, ambient occlusion. So this is how your setup should look like. We have RGB image, shadow, and ambient occlusion, and then we also have ambient occlusion from the effects panel we did earlier. I'm going to save that. I'm going to jump back to After Effects. So in your project panel, you have the Cinema 4D layer. All right. So now we have to set in the multipass by maybe this is the layer for the RGBA. All right. So I need to select that, and in your effects controls, you need to set Cinema 4D multipass and set the multipass for the first layer, okay, for RGB image. So I'm press OK. So that's what is set for now. So I'm going to go back to the project panel, and I'm going to bring two more of these versions, right? Number two is going to be for shadows. So I'm going to drag and drop there for shadows, okay? Make sure that we have, and again, set to current, right? And then we will have to go to the multipass, enable the multipass, and set the multipass for this one is to shadow. Press OK. All right. We have to change the blend modes option. So if you click on the toggle switch at the bottom here, you can see you have the blend mode which is set to normal. Switch that to multiply. Okay, now you see you have the shadows there. So that's the layers with shadow. So I can rename that actually. All right, so this is going to be it's good to rename your layers so it'll be easy for you to understand when you come back a little later to edit stuff. And last but not least, if you notice down here, there's no contact shadow. I'm going to make another one of this. So I'm going to go back to my project panel, and I'm going to drag one more of this version. All right, and I'm going to call this AO, short for ambient occlusion. Again, we have to set this to current, and we will get rid of this the shadow catcher here by you going down to the multipass and set this multipass to ambient occlusion and press OK. And again, we change the mode to multiply. And now you can see you have that black shadows at the bottom, right? We are looking at half resolution. We can change to full resolution if you want to see the whole thing. You can see that black area there. We can see the contact shadows of the object. All right. So that's it. This is a simple version of this. Obviously, you can now go back into Cinema 4D. You can put in whatever 3D objects that you can download. Fortunately enough, inside of Cinema 4D After Effects workflow that we are doing now, it's all live, which means now I do not have to re-render my passes for me to change what's inside my scene here. I can show you what I mean by that. If I now go back to Cinema 4D, go back to the text layer, right? Or I can just do a change over here. Go back to the attributes. Instead of Cinema 4D, we can put After Effects. All right, and updates. All right, and I'll save that, and you go back to After Effects. It's updated. All right, maybe we can just push it more to the left a bit. Save that again, jump back with the shadows and everything, right? You didn't have to even do multipass. Obviously, you have to take care of all this stuff. You might do some rotoscoping for masking and all that. So that's it, folks. So again, this is the latest version of After Effects and the latest version of Cinema 4D. Let's change that to something even easier to use. All right, let's call it a solid. Let's put it over there, and let's make it larger a bit. Let's change the size. All right, so what you need to do is you need to go in and play with the textures, play with the reflections, and you'll get something quite nice. If I change it that to now to full resolution, you will see right, so you have a nice 3D object. It's a very simple workflow where you can create a 3D object. The key thing here that you have to followed just now is the 3D tracking, which we done in After Effects. You export to Cinema 4D, and then in Cinema 4D you can throw in whatever that you need. You see a 3D text or a 3D object, which you can get something like from Turbo Squid. So I hope this tutorial has helped you and make you understand how 3D works in After Effects. So please try it. If you have any comments, please leave it at the comments area below. You can get the footage in the description below. You can download and then try it for yourself. Okay, please leave your comments, and if it's something that you have learned, please say hello or hi, or if you have anything that you want to improve upon that you know that that I didn't show in this particular tutorial, please do so in the comments below. Okay guys, thank you very much, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.